All right, welcome, welcome. So here's our notes for today. We have one goal, and that is to be able to identify and prove congruent triangles using SSS, SAS, HL, ASA, and AAS. So goal 1, proving triangles congruent. So what does it mean for triangles to be congruent? This means corresponding. Remember, corresponding means same spot, okay? So corresponding sides and angles I'm losing my mind. There we go. Angles are congruent. And the symbol for congruent is an equal sign with a little snake above it. Okay, that's important to know. So just a reminder, corresponding means same spot. Congruent means equal. They're going to be the same measure. They're going to be equal measure. All right, so let's talk about our 5 ways to prove triangles congruent. So our first way, SSS, which means side, side, side. This is when 3 sides of a triangle are congruent to 3 sides of another triangle. Then you can say that those triangles are congruent by side, side, side. So if you notice, there's a lot of abbreviation done here. We do little mathematical sentences, okay? And I'm going to provide you with all the examples I possibly can. So here we go for side, angle, side. This is whenever you have 2 sides and the included angle. Now, included means it's going to be between them, okay? It's going to be between the 2 sides of a triangle congruent to 2 sides. Go off screen. Nope. And the included angle of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. And again, I will provide you with all types of visual examples for you to be able to use on your homework, okay? HL, hypotenuse leg. This is only for right triangles, okay? So if it's not a right triangle, HL cannot apply. All right, so this is when the hypotenuse, and I will be abbreviating, and leg of a right triangle is congruent to the hypotenuse and leg of another right triangle. Then those triangles are congruent by HL. Okay? Again, I'll be providing all types of visual examples. 2 more, and these look very similar. We have ASA and AAS. So please pay close attention to what we're doing with those sides, okay? So angle, side, angle. This is when you have 2 angles and the included side. Now remember, included means between of a triangle, congruent to the 2 angles and the included side of another triangle. Then those triangles are congruent by angle, side, angle. So for this one here, it's important to recognize that that side is going to be between the 2 angles, okay? It's going to be between them, okay? And the last one we're going to talk about, let me get another color. I need to go buy me some new pens because I'm running out of colors. Do I have purple? Yes, I do. All right, angle, angle, side. This is when you have two angles and a side. Okay? So this is going to be after. It's not included. It's not specific. Okay? The triangle is congruent to two angles and a side of another triangle. Okay? Then they are going to be congruent by angle, angle, side. So, I'm more of a visual person, so yeah, having all this written down is beautiful notes, but of course the examples are what I, as a student, would prefer to see. So let's go ahead and do those. If you need more time to write these down, please pause the video now and write them down. All right, if not, we're moving on to our first example, and there are going to be like two pictures with this first one. Let me see if I can zoom out so you can get them both. Okay, if you'd like to, go ahead and pause the video now so you can draw these examples in your notes. Okay, I will now begin, starting with side, side, side. Now remember, side, side, side is whenever three sides of one triangle are correspondingly congruent to three sides of another. So when we look at our first example here, what we're looking for are for those sides to have the same number of dash marks. For example, see how these sides both have one dash mark? I can label them S. Okay, because that's a side. So if you see a dash mark, we're going to label it S. And if the dash marks are matching, then we can label them S. So you see how both of these are two dash marks? Since they match, we can label them S. See how both of these are three dash marks? Since they match, we can label them S. And then what I do is I tell my students, read what the triangle is telling you. So this triangle is saying side, side, side. So I'm going to write side, side, side. And this triangle is saying side, side, side. Do you notice how their readings match? This means that these two triangles are congruent by side, side, side. Okay? All right. Let's continue practicing side, side, side with our next example down here for example 1. So let's talk about what's going on in this one. Again, if they have matching dash marks, we're going to label them S. See how both of these have one dash mark? We're going to label them S for side. See how both of these have two dash marks? We're going to label them S for side. And if you're like, well, there's no other dash marks, but there's another bit of information we have here. Do you notice how these two triangles are sharing a side? Anytime you have a shared side, it's guaranteed to be congruent because it's shared. So we can label that S as well because it is shared side. S for side, okay? So let's read our triangle. It's saying S, S, S. And this one says S, S, S. Do they match? Yes, they do. So we can say that the triangles are congruent by side, side, side. Okay? If they both, let's say up here, this one said side, 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 but this one only said side, side, since they didn't match, they would not be congruent, okay? They have to match to be congruent. All right, let's talk about our next one. That is side, angle, side. This is the one where we're talking about having two sides and an included angle. It has to be the angle in between the two, in between the two sides. So again, labeling our parts. So when we look at our figure here, we have our matching ones, and we're going to label them S. Remember, if they're dash marks, they're S's. Labeling these also as S because they're a matching two. Now for angles, we're looking for arcs. See how both of these have one arc? That means that they are angles that match. All right, now if you're like, how can you make sure that the angle is included? How can you make sure it's in between the two sides? Well, one of the tricks I've told kids in the past is to go ahead and draw the angle. And if you notice the angle is created by the sides, you're good to go. So if I was to draw this angle, see how it's created by the sides? We're good to go. So when we read this one, and I always read the shortest distance possible. So I don't want to go all the way around. I want to just go boop. So this one says side angle side. Boop. This one also says side angle side. See how they match? That means they're congruent. So you'd say angles are congruent by side angle side. And again, you can pause at any time to make sure you get all the notes written down. This one's probably going to have 2 videos. Okay, so we're looking at this one here, and I notice I have 2 dash marks. Side, I have 3 dash marks. Side, but we don't have any arcs for angles, but we do have something else. Do you notice we have a bow tie? And what do we know about a bow tie? They're vertical angles. And vertical angles are equal, so these would be A's because they're the same. So when we read this one, side angle side, we read this one, side angle side. See how they match? That means they're congruent by side angle side. Okay, let's look at this one. All right, we have our 1 dash marks, so that's our side. We have our 1 arcs, that's our angle. But what else do we have going on? Oh, we got that shared side. And remember, if they share a side, that means it's congruent. So we can label that S. So this says side angle side. And this one also says side angle side. See how they match? That means the angles are congruent by side angle side. Now, speaking of congruency with an A and 2 S's, there is a rule that you need to make sure you understand. There are no donkeys in geometry. What does that mean? That means you are never going to have an angle, side, side, okay? If that ever pops up, if you ever notice an angle, side, side happening, they are not congruent, all right? So if this was like angle, side, side, not congruent. Got it? All right. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and stop this as our first video for this section, and there will be a part 2, so make sure you watch it as well. We'll be starting with HL on part 2.